Tennessee Senate District 19, and welcome again to the Constituent Advocacy Campaign's Voter Education Series. This is yours truly, Ruben Dockery, the campaign's organizer and the Voter Education Series facilitator. Today we are focusing on the last of our four-part series, how to hold your elected official, accountable. And so what we're going to do today is look at who is in place, who represents constituents throughout Senate District 19, Tennessee Senate District 19 that is. Some idea how long they've been in office, and what region of the Senate District do they represent, from the Senate level to the House of Representative level as well. Okay? So again, thank you for joining us, and we're going to go ahead and get started with part 4. And let me encourage you to join us on our website at www.constituentadvocacy.com, and you can see the other previously recorded portions of the four-part series. Those sections are there and on our website, and we'll certainly encourage you to go and to make yourself aware of those. Again, the point of this is about voter education. Alrighty. So again, we're talking today about how to hold your elected official accountable. Let's begin, as we did in the previous sections, with a review of our objectives, so that we'll be clear on what we're expecting to have gained at the end of this section today. So part 4 objectives are as follows. Upon the completion of this section, observers will be informed about the current senator of Tennessee Senate District 19 and the 4 relevant current representatives of Tennessee House Districts 54, 58, 51, and 59. They will examine a schematic model for building and maintaining a channel of communication between constituents and elected officials from the Senate District level to the voting precinct level. Actually, it's a bit more comprehensive. It will start from the congressional level and then work itself down to the precinct level. Learn how to organize a precinct governance council, PGC, which is the purpose to identify, represent, and secure the political, social, and economic interest of constituents in each voting precinct of Senate District 19. All right. With that, let's begin by identifying who's in place currently. But before I do that, consider this. The best way to control an individual is to keep them blind, hungry, and dependent on you. Voter apathy is indicated by low voter turnout during elections. Historically, the lowest voter turnout has been in precincts that are predominantly African American, where there is significant poverty, educational failure, and social chaos. Now, over the last 25 years, the above status has been a constant for Senate District 19, certainly in particular voting precincts. It's a time for change. Having said that, let's look at the map briefly and the schematic that the map offers. All right. Tennessee Senate District 19 currently is represented by Senator Thelma Harper, the incumbent. And we spoke of that in previous sections as we identified who the senator is, what their role is. But so you know that now. And you can see how large of an area Senate District 19 is geographically, okay? Or the topography of it, if you will, the layout, the land. But then if you'll look down at the bottom of your schematic here to your right, to my left, or to the left there, you'll see that Tennessee House District 54 is currently represented by Brenda Gilmore. She represents the northwest section, and that is the, I guess you can call that the beige section there, to the upper left corner. And it butts against Tennessee House District 51 that is represented by Bill Beck, and that's the northeast section of the Senate District. And we're going to go a little bit more in detail about each of these elected officials. Then if you'll look at Tennessee House District 58, Harold M. Love Jr., and that's the central section of Senate District 19. And then there's one more portion that is represented. Typically, there are three senators that represent, there are three House members that represent Senate District 19 in terms of the equal proportionment. But as you'll notice here, there are certain voting precincts that lap over with other Senate districts, as we learned earlier, that District 20 and 21 basically encapsulates 19. All right, and so what you're looking at with the red House District 59, which is represented by Sherry Jones, that's the southeastern section. You'll notice that there's a small portion there that represents the very tail as you look at the Senate District of the Senate District there in terms of representation. And you'll notice that in the Senate map, there are darker areas, and then there are a lot of rural areas. And you'll notice the darkest areas right in the center of the larger map, where the greatest concentration are populations within those specific voting precincts. Okay. So with that, we're going to now formally introduce you to these individuals who are currently representing us on the Senate level and in those respective voting House districts where there are voting precincts that fall within Senate District 19. Okay, so first let's look at Tennessee Senate District 19. As we said, Senator Thelma Harper, Democrat, incumbent since 1992, and she's still there at the moment. And Senator Harper has held this seat for a quarter of a century. During her tenure, many major social economic changes have taken place. However, very little communication has transpired between her and the majority of constituents in Senate District 19. In the most challenged voting precincts, residents know little about her legislative accomplishments, particularly young voters. Today, it is difficult to see a clear vision of growth for the Senate District from this level of leadership. Now, it is widely believed that she will not seek re-election in November of 2018, but time will tell that story. Tennessee House District 54, which is one of the respective House districts that are directly impacting Senate District 19. Representative Brenda Gilmore, a Democrat. She's been an incumbent since 2006, and she currently holds the seat, elected every 2 years. Representative Gilmore has served in the Tennessee House of Representatives for 11 years. She represents the northwestern region of Senate District 19. What many of the voting precincts under her leadership have in common are high unemployment rates, significant academic achievement gaps, high crime rates, and major gentrification taking place. She has launched a campaign to replace current Senator Harper in the 2018 election. However, the Senate district needs change and not more of the same stagnated leadership. Now, while she should be applauded for her willingness to serve beginning in 2006 and her continued interest in public service, in the interest of the forward progress of constituents, she must be held to the highest level of account for her record in state government thus far. So to that I'll say, I understand and I appreciate her running, but it should never be assumed by anyone that it is an automatic that she should be elected to represent us all in Senate District 19. Certainly we need some change. All right. Tennessee House District 58. Representative Harold M. Love Jr., Democrat. Been an incumbent since 2012, and he's currently in the seat. Representative Love has served in the Tennessee House of Representatives for 5 years now. He represents the central region of Senate District 19. Now, similar to House District 54, where Representative Gilmore is, many of the voting precincts under his leadership are negatively affected by high unemployment, significant academic achievement gaps, high crime rates, and major gentrification. That cannot be understated, or overstated, I should say. Because when you look at it, these are the groups of individuals who struggle the most, and we really need active, proactive leadership from the highest level to the lowest. All constituents should work to be aware of their representatives' legislative records and their level of communication with them. This will lead to more accountability. And that's really what we're talking about in this section. Now, Tennessee House District 51, Representative Bill Beck, Democrat. Been an incumbent since 2014, and he's currently there now. Representative Beck has served in the Tennessee House of Representatives for 3.5 years now. He represents the northeastern region of Senate District 19. This region is steadily being impacted by migratory trends as a consequence of the gentrifying of urban Nashville. We're talking about the Madison area, the Goodlettsville area, and generally in that region. All constituents should work to be aware of their representatives' legislative records and their level of communication with them. This, again, will lead to accountability. In respects to Representative Beck, he's only been there 3 years. I would encourage voters to search his record out and have a serious conversation with him. Now, if you're not sure if you're within his legislative district in the House, within Senate District 19, again, you can go to the previous show that we did on Part 1, which identified the boundaries for Senate District 19. Okay? And you can identify that by your zip code as well as by your voting precinct that has been assigned, as you've been assigned. Alrighty. Then lastly, Tennessee House District 59, Representative Sherry Jones, incumbent since 1994, still there at present. Now we got a long record to look at here, okay? And if you're in the Antioch area, in District 28 and 30, 32, and interestingly enough, this is where a lot is going on right now in those areas of Antioch. Okay, a lot of uncomfortableness and things of that nature, different groups and experiences and influences that are there. All right, this is why it's critical to have that communication. Representative Jones has served in the Tennessee House of Representatives for 23 years. She represents the southeastern region of Senate District 19. Now, similar to House District 54 and 58, as I just alluded to, many of the voting precincts under her leadership are negatively affected by high unemployment, significant academic achievement gaps, high crime rates, and major gentrification. All constituents, I repeat again, should work to be aware of their representatives' legislative records and their level of communication with them. This is how we lead to accountability. Again, as I mentioned, Representative Jones has a pretty extensive or long record, I should say, to go back and look at 23 years, almost as long as Senator Harper has been there. But more importantly, I want to re-emphasize the fact that, as evidenced by when we talk about the challenges for those voting precincts we pointed out, we look at high unemployment, we can look at the census data as well as the information prepared by the Metro Nashville Department of Social Services, and the state also have information relative to that. Okay, state of Tennessee. When we talk about the achievement gap, all we look at is the schools that are on the state's priority list and the fact that they still struggle to meet annual yearly progress. For particularly young people, children that are attending those schools who live within Senate District 19 and live within the boundaries of certain voter precincts that tend to be predominantly minority. Okay? And then when we talk about the crime rates, just look at Metro crime maps and point where they are. And the proof is in the pudding. Okay, and of course, I think we all understand the nature of the gentrification, where businesses and developments are coming in areas that historically were economically deprived and had a lot of socioeconomic challenges. Now they're being built up and money's being invested in them. And the individuals that used to live there can no longer live there. They're being moved out. They're being pushed off. I think we understand that. That is a reality for Senate District 19. All right. So now let me share with you a schematic for building a voter constituent line of communication with government leadership. I'm going to begin in the middle in this model here, and then we'll work on the sides. First, we'll go to the left, and then we'll go to the right. All right, after we work in the middle. You'll notice there that the United States Congressional District 5 representative, when you vote, they're looking for you to vote from them, and they're considering what happens in Senate District 19 as well as in the state representative districts that I just mentioned to you. And I told you who represented you there. Okay? And so this is how they're elected. But specifically, we want to focus our attention today from the Senate level down to Precinct Governance Council. We're going to learn more about that. All right? And I'm suggesting that there should be an organized line of communication and interaction with constituents on the state Senate level in District 19, as well as your respective representative House districts. There should also be communication established on the council level, city council level, because you have representatives that are elected there as well from each of your respective council districts. And as we learned in part 1, there are 21 of those in Senate District that make up Senate District 19, I should say. Okay? But what I'm suggesting is that you should also be represented appropriately, but first organized. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. On the precinct level. And to do that, I don't think these exist, so it's why I'm suggesting that you consider forming or organizing them. And this makes sure that you hold all of those who you have voted for or could vote for accountable to your needs and your interests. Okay? And what I'm talking about now is the precinct governance council level on your local voter precinct level. Okay? As we mentioned in part one, in each council district there are a number of voting precincts that vote within that council district. Okay? And what happens is that you're assigned to go vote a certain place to elect your official on the council level and above. Now, on the state representative level, all of your voting precincts may not vote for that particular representative. And as you'll notice in the earlier map, what you saw is that there were certain areas that are carved out based on the way the map was carved by the General Assembly in 2011. Okay? But what you need to know is who is it that represents you on each of those levels. And the Precinct Governance Council is an excellent way to keep informed, to be engaged, and to be empowered. All right? So let's go to the left of our model here now. And let's look at the State Senate District. I'm suggesting that an alliance that stems from the Precinct Governance Council can represent you there. All right, and it should be comprised of selected council district advocates, and should have a chairperson, a co-chair, and someone who does regular reporting. Remember we talked about the budgetary process and what time of the year it begins and how the senator should be communicating with you. And we further stated that it's impossible to think that 109,000 people would be able to have long-term conversation with one senator. Well, if there's an organized process by which the information that's important for you can come down to designated individuals and get to you accordingly, we have that open channel communication. Okay? Same thing on the council district level. There should be an alliance as well. And of those voting precincts involved, that council represents those voting precincts because they represent the people that live on your block in your neighborhood. Okay? A chair, a co-chair, and a reporter. Someone that keeps information going, that's designated to do so. And by the way, these people are those who, through organization and planning, will represent you in open government meetings. And when discussions are being held about various legislations and things that will affect you ultimately. Okay? So you're constantly represented. Now let's go to the right of the schematic. As you see there, the United States Tennessee Congressional District number 5, there should also be a structured alliance, okay, comprised of selected or respective voting precincts, right? And there should be a chairperson, representative, and a co-chair, as well as a reporter. Now, what's the purpose of all these? Some of these can be represented by the same people. Once each council district has put together a precinct governance council, and they are properly trained, and there's that organization, then you can have these people representing you on each one of those levels. And because you don't want to wear a handful of people out, it's good to identify from within your council district individuals that can represent the precinct governance council on each of those levels. All right. Lastly, voting precinct governance council. Now, look at what we got here. And we're suggesting it should be comprised of residents living in the voting precinct. All right. Naturally, you can't vote unless you're active, right? But even if you're not a voter, even if you're a young person or someone who hadn't voted who need to re-register, or someone with a felony record, you need to be involved in, because laws, policies, and allocation of resources are going to affect you one way or another. Okay? So there you want to make sure you have individuals who certainly can vote, who can go and have access to information. There we'll have a captain of every precinct. Every voting precinct should identify themselves a captain, a co-captain, a reporter, a treasurer, someone that represents them on the city council level, and again, I mentioned these people will be spread out on the House of Representative level, on the state representative level, the congressional level, in terms of this representation. All right? This is a suggested model. I'm happy in the future in our voter education process to intimate this clearly for you. All right. Now, we've been talking about the concept of a precinct governance council. Let me give you some guiding principles for what a voting precinct governance is and what the purpose of it is. Okay? Consent. The basis for governance on any level is the express will of the people. Education. Prior to casting any ballot, a voter should be reasonably informed about the electoral process itself, candidates, and the issues facing them. Registration. There should be a process in place to ensure that all eligible voters of a respective precinct are properly registered to vote in a given election. Participation. There should be a process in place to encourage and ensure that all eligible voters of a respective precinct have reasonable access to the poll and the opportunity to vote in elections. Communication. There should be a process in place to maintain an open line of communication between elected officials and constituents of the respective voting precinct. And lastly, accountability. Prior to, during the campaign cycle, and after the election of an elected official, there should be a documented agreement among the elected official and the precinct governance council's executive board. That's how you hold them accountable. You don't, they get to go to public office and do whatever they want to on your dime, because those are your tax dollars that they spend. They would not be there if it were not for you. In fact, government would not be there, not for citizens, constituents. All right? So I hope y'all understand where I'm going here. All right, now let's go a little bit further. And now let's look at the definitions of some related concepts relative to the Precinct Governance Council, because this is key. And again, much of this is to be intimated in a think tank session or a workshop on the precinct level, which I'm very much happy to do with those of you in Tennessee Senate District 19 in the future. The Governance Council itself is an organized gathering of residents or voters to address issues of importance to their neighborhood or neighborhoods and the community as a whole. That's what it is in a nutshell. A policy agenda. By that we mean written and approved guidelines for representing the interests of residents of voting precincts within political boundaries. Okay? The Senate District, as we know, we covered this in part one, the largest political boundary of the Tennessee General Assembly. That's determined by it, where voters are assigned to an elected official to represent their interests in the Senate, House, the State Senate. Then the House District, very similarly, is the second largest, right under the Senate boundaries, political boundary of the Tennessee General Assembly, where voters are assigned to an elected official to represent their interests in the House of Representatives. Then the Council District, as we've covered, this is somewhat of a review, the geographic and political boundaries set by, here's the change, the metropolitan government for constituents or voters represented by an elected chairperson, right? And then the voting precinct, the smallest division of constituents or residents within the political boundary of a council district. Eligible voters within a given council district are assigned to a location or site where they cast their vote in a given election. I want to go back just for a second and emphasize the fact that when you get to the council district level, after the state has set its boundaries for the for the city government or county government, itself, and for the House representation of those residents there, and within the Senate, it is there that the metro government or the city government looks at the state's maps and determine how they're going to break up and assign various council districts and voters with them based on the number of people there. Okay, there is a particular formula, as I understand. All right, but you also notice that it is the voting precinct level, I'm suggesting, that is unorganized or the least organized, because the people themselves tend, with all due respect, not to be organized. That's where the work can go in. And the best indication of leadership is for your elected officials to make you aware of that and to work with you on organizing a manner by which they stay in regular communication with you and you have access and opportunity to hold them accountable. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the precinct governance councils and its general aims. Okay, what are the general aims of it? Well, it provides guiding principles on voter education. What are you being taught? What are you learning about in terms of the electoral process? Registration. We hear often people say, you got to get out and register to vote. You got to register to vote. And participation. And go out and vote. For who, for what, why? And this is why a lot of old and young voters are despondent, and we learned about the voter apathy in part 3 just last week. And you understand why it is now. So many people say, forget it. Folks gonna do what they want to do. I don't care. It's a game. I ain't playing the game. Well, you need to know that you do have through your vote, the power to choose who represents you. And if no one is doing their job, they got to go. All right. The aims are to establish a set of bylaws on the precinct governance council level so that you can be properly governed. Okay. Membership and participation on the precinct governance level. In other words, in your neighborhood, on the blocks, there should be some communication or organization. Now, this requires some work. Again, your leadership is key in helping you frame this and form this. As I mentioned, I'm happy to work with each voting precinct to put these things together in the coming months. Strategic planning. All right. That's an important thing to take place on the precinct governance council level. And then lastly, process for choosing a candidate for elected office on the local, state, and federal levels. All right, those are the general aims of the precinct governance council. Now let's talk about the organization of the precinct governance council. What should that involve? Well, forming of an assembly of respective voting precinct residents. That's really what it is, bringing those people together to say, listen, we need to be properly represented because what affects you affects me. Now, interestingly enough, some people seem to have the right connection as who they know, and that's not good enough in a fair situation, in a real process. That's why some young people on the snatch and grab, because they don't know the right people. All they know is the snatch and grab. I'll leave that right there. Okay. Elected officers among that group of people assembled representing your respective voting precinct. establishing of bylaw committees, okay, bylaws committees that should be involved, reading of proposed bylaws before the assembly of residents or members that make up that precinct governance council. And there should be a first, a second, and a third reading. And then lastly, that body of individuals working in agreement with one another will adopt bylaws for the precinct governance council itself. All right? Now, let's talk about an economic agenda for the precinct governance council. The creation of a 4-year strategic plan for economic empowerment of residents who are employed or underemployed. I should say who are unemployed or underemployed. Such planning will include, but not be limited to, a cooperative economic development initiative. And really, it's a good idea to look at this from the precinct level first, and you can look at it broader from the council level. But when you look at those people that live on your block, in your neighborhood, what are we struggling with? What do we need, right, in terms of economic development and initiatives there? Business planning and startups for residents, people that live there. Certainly not everybody wants to start a business, but certainly that's the fastest way for you to become independent. All right. Acquisition of community funding, a community funding mechanism. Now, what I mean by that simply is, as you work with your elected officials, make sure in your communication with them, they're talking about how you can access available resources on the city level, on the state level, and on the federal level. Okay, because you pay taxes for your property, you pay taxes to cover schools and all those things, on goods and services, and if you have a business, you pay business taxes, and then you pay your income taxes to Uncle Sam. So this is what we're talking about. That's the thing that we're basing this concept on. All right, now let's look at the educational agenda from the Precinct Governance Council. And you'll notice that each of these things are specifically intended to address the issues that we talked about in Part 3 that confront constituents of Senate District 19. Creation of a 4-year strategic plan for the educational advancement of adult residents and children in public schools. Such planning will include, but not be limited to, the establishing of a 21st century community learning center with an emphasis on offering family education, training on parent involvement in public schools, and providing opportunities for adult continued education. Now, you know that maybe you don't know, but perhaps you do. The governor has been working hard to make sure that young people that leave high school can get at least 2 years of post-secondary education or college for free. When they do well there, they can transfer it to a 4-year institution and receive a bachelor's degree. It's pretty good, right? But further, they have changed it to where even if you're an adult and you've been out of high school, you can go back and get a skill and get certified in a particular skill, industrial type skill, that allow you to improve your economic well-being. Parents helping their children, and children growing in development within your precinct governance council. All right? That's leadership. That's what real leadership looks like. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk with you about the Precinct Governance Council's social agenda. Now, this is not all encompassing. This doesn't comprise all of it, but certainly this is a starting point for us. Okay. Creation of a 4-year strategic plan for improving the quality of life for all residents of the Precinct Governance Council. Such planning will include, but not be limited to, identifying neighborhood-based solutions to address criminal behavior at its root cause. Now, some people want to act like they don't know where it comes from, okay? But you live there, and you know who and what and where and why the problem exists. But often there are no resources for the individuals who get caught up and become the most negative forces in our neighborhood. I'm not suggesting that you just throw them away and throw away the key, lock them up and throw away the key. But let's find the resources for them to give them an opportunity to change. Offer social and emotional support to families and youth. Oftentimes when someone gets killed or someone dies tragically, the whole neighborhood is emotionally disturbed. It's affected by it. And we see that through the visuals and things of that nature. But no, there's no follow-up in terms of the emotional support, the counseling and things of that nature. Certainly we can work with churches and with other organizations to provide that on a greater level. But more importantly, reduce the killings and so forth and so on. Okay? These tragedies that seem to be reoccurring too often, particularly in certain voting precincts. Ensure property protection for residents, things of that nature. And lastly, form a community and district-wide treaty, some sort of written understanding, not only on the voting precinct level, but on the council level. Not only on the council level, but on the city level. Not only on the city level, but on the House of Representative level. Not only on the House of Representative level, but on the Senate level. And beyond to your federal House of Representative, U.S. House of Representative level. Okay? If you organize like that, fellow constituents, you're in a much better place to ensure that nobody runs over you or take advantage of you as a constituent, Senate District 19. Now, I just mentioned lastly in the last slide about a treaty. I think that a good framework for such a treaty, such agreement, is as such. The preamble of the 19th Senatorial District of Tennessee. You may have heard this in our last section. We, the people of the 19th Senatorial District of Tennessee, in order to form a more perfect senatorial district, ensure justice, promote public harmony, provide for common protection, promote general interest, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our children. Do ordain and consent to the common organization of the electorate of Tennessee Senate District 19. That would be all 21 council districts in all 47 voting precincts alike. I want to thank you for joining me for this last portion and encourage you to stay tuned for more information. www.constituentadvocacy.com is the web page. I'd like to encourage you to go there and stay informed and learn more about it. We'll have a brief synopsis of how to access all of that information. This has been your Constituent Advocacy Organization organizer and Voter Education Series facilitator, Ruben Dockery. Thank you again, and I look forward to being in touch with you in the future.